welcome. I'm Carrie Weber, co-owner and Chief Communications Officer of Jameson, a business and hygiene and marketing consulting group that is proud to partner with Henry Schein through their endeavors. I'd like to personally thank the Henry Schein Dental Business Institute for the opportunity to present to you today. I'm looking forward to this time together, and I look forward to being a support to you, the participants of this webinar, in any way that I can as you prepare your practice for the most effective and successful reopening possible. The topic for today's webinar is how to prepare and execute your patient experience during your reopening phase. Now, at the moment of watching this presentation, you may already be well on your way in seeing patients in your dental practice. My hope and my goal for us today is whether you're preparing to reenter and looking for support in how to adapt your processes and verbal skills effectively, or you may be in the process of seeing patients and looking for ways to adapt what you're already doing now to make it better. That's my goal for us today, to walk through some appropriate tools and concepts to help you care for your patients with excellence. Let's begin. An important area to begin is to start at the beginning, where we work in two different areas of focus, where we're focusing, clarifying, and refining processes and approaches with both our team and our patients. We need to make sure that we're partnering as best as we can together for success across the board. You're going to be looking at a very different dental day as you begin with your patients and your practices. And we want to make sure that everyone is set up for success and everyone has the skills, clarity, and understanding to appropriately and effectively walk our patients through their experience. So I want to introduce to you some areas that I would encourage you to focus on, both as a team within the practice and your processes and in your communications and connections with your patients. Let's start with team. It's important, I know, that you have been doing all the steps necessary to stabilize your business, prepare for the protective measures for your practice and for your team and patients, and that can be an all-consuming element of the practice reopening phase. But what I don't want you to forget about are the key players in your day-to-day life, your team and your patients. And I want you to step outside your own daily experiences and stresses and maybe what's going on in your head and think about what's going on in their minds right now. For your team, for example, as you prepare to bring them back or as you return to practice, you need to be considering and making room for conversations and clarity and focus around what they may be thinking right now. A lot of team members are thinking these things. What steps have been taken from our practice leaders to prepare us for the safest and most successful reopening when that day comes? What is the plan? Is everyone on the same page? Do they all know the steps that you've taken, practice leaders, to ensure success and protective measures? What's the plan and who's responsible for what? What is their role in these updated and adapted processes? Is everyone clear in their responsibilities every step of the way? This is going to ensure an efficient and successful day for you. What do we say? A lot of times, this is a major blind spot in our day-to-day. We are stepping into patient conversations as if it's business as usual. And there are a lot of changes, a lot of steps, a lot of elements to reopening during this time that we need to be very aware of and be bringing into the conversation. So if you're currently confirming appointments, reaching out to patients in the ways that you have historically done so, this may be an important piece for you as a team to circle up on and make sure that we are clearly and effectively communicating to our patients so that expectations are met appropriately. Your patients are also thinking things in their own way. That if we're only focused on the practice side, the processes within the practice, and we're forgetting to focus on the patient-facing systems, verbal skills, and elements of the day-to-day, That's a huge gap that needs to be filled. Questions your patients may be thinking at this moment: is it safe? Will I be safe if I keep that appointment? What can I expect? They may not even realize what they can or might not expect. We need to make sure we're painting a clear picture for them of what they're going to step into, so those surprises don't become upsetting to them. What's expected of me? Remember, we're not the only ones that are stepping out after having a couple of difficult months. Your patients may have gone through a lot of challenges as well, and we need to make sure that we're recognizing the things that are expected of them and being proactive in those conversations and the tools to help them comfortably re-enter our practices with us. How does this benefit me? Any steps that we've taken, any changes that we've made, it's important that we are really clear and confident in communicating how this benefits our patients. Remember, our patients are going to be motivated for their own selves. So if all we're talking about and thinking about is from our perspective, we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle in connecting with our patients and building that relationship, building trust, and rebuilding the value of those appointments. How does this benefit me? So the question I want you to ask, or questions I want you to ask yourself, is this: do you as a team have a set COVID-19 patient experience process in place that embraces and adapts to all of the necessary additions into your practice? Is it clear? Is it practiced? Have you rehearsed it? Have you walked through this new process as a team so everyone understands and is clear and comfortable with what this will look like in the dental day? Is everyone aware, confident, and ready? If we haven't taken a moment to gather together as a team and walk through this, there may be some obstacles you're going to run into, some stumbling blocks, so to speak, when it comes to walking the patient through that. The clearer we are, the clearer we can make it for our patients. The more comfortable and confident we are, the more comfortable and confident we can help our patients to be through their appointments. So ask yourself this question, and if you haven't taken the time to map out the appropriate process for the patient experience, now is the time. You may already be in practice at this moment and you're kind of the blind leading the blind at this point. If that's the case, take a pause, connect together, and refine and adjust and clarify those steps so that you can be more effective day in and day out. Here is what, for an example, may be your new patient experience at this time. You're going through a pre-COVID screening. You're reaching out to your patients to reschedule, schedule, and confirm appointments. You're needing to access patient forms in perhaps a very altered way. Many of the clients that we work with at Jameson are starting to embrace digital patient forms even more today than ever before. A lot of what we're finding are things that we're working on ourselves with our clients, and these are some of the steps that we're walking through with them. The check-in has changed dramatically. We are now greeting and screening our patients. The provider time is different. The checkout approach and process has also adjusted and changed, some more than others. And what's important is that we become very clear on what this new model of the patient journey looks like, that we've made the appropriate adjustments, that you think through the systems of your practice and what areas could use attention, what areas are going to be impacted, and that we're mapping that out appropriately. Your systems are going to make a huge difference in the success of your days. As our founder, Kathy Jameson, says, the success of your practice is in direct proportion to the success of your systems. So if your systems had glitches and gaps and weren't working effectively before, it's more important than ever that we focus through what right looks like in the practice and streamline as best as we possibly can. So look at this and compare it to what your patient experience is at this time. In the pre-COVID screening and the scheduling and confirmations, these are more than likely being entered upon through telephone technique. How are your telephone skills at this time? We will speak to that later on in this presentation. Again, taking a look at your patient forms and walking through what your check-in process is going to look like. More than likely, you've assigned some new roles for your team members to help adequately walk your patients through their appointments. Make sure everyone's comfortable with what their new normal roles are, that you have practiced, that you have opportunities to ask questions and work through the areas that they may be struggling with. That we are really clear on how we're going to greet and screen and prepare our patients when they step into the practice for their appointments. That we've been very aware of the provider time. This is going to be very unique depending upon your practice. If you are a solo doctor practice, you have a lot of expectations when it comes to the hygiene appointments as well as your own restorative appointments. If you're a multi-doctor practice, you may be reassigning the providers to provide the different areas of care that are necessary to streamline based upon PPE needs and your OSHA and infection control requirements and guidelines that have been given to us through the appropriate organizations. Your checkout may be different. What we're trying to accomplish is that the patient is as touchless as possible, that their time in the practice is as short as possible, and that we are smoothly and concisely walking them through without losing that elevated customer service approach. We're going to be covered in head to toe in protective measures, and so it's going to be important that their experience of elevated customer service is reflective in everything that they experience to another heightened degree. What your patients need from you through their experience is guidance and an advocate walking them through the experience as best as possible. When you're reaching out to them to schedule or confirm or reschedule appointments, how are you changing what was once done to be more attentive to their needs in the current state? You're guiding patients on what to expect. As I showed you just previously, in what may be the new patient appointment experience, there's a lot of new in that. There's a lot of change. And while it's also difficult for us as the team members in the practice to go through that change, it's equally as confusing and new for the patient. So we want to guide them through what they can expect so that their perception and their preparation for their appointment leaves them feeling prepared and emotionally ready for what that's going to be like. That we have clear, smooth guidance on check-in and checkout process. We not only are going to do this differently, but we need to explain and educate the patients on how this is going to be different and partner with them in effective conversations to make sure that they feel comfortable and approve of the new steps we're taking for their safety and for the practice. We want to provide them with guided support before, during, and after the appointment. It's in this moment I want to take a small caveat and state during the appointment, it could be very easy for us to get comfortable and begin to state things that aren't on the positive side, how hot we are, how difficult this is, how much harder it is. And I want you to be very careful and very aware of how we're representing the practice with the patients. Each member of the team can make or break the patient experience. And we want to be positive every step of the way. Stay positive. Clear and efficient financial and scheduling processes need to be in place. This is a piece, these are systems and practices that oftentimes when we were with our clients, these probably weren't working as well as they could be before the coronavirus pandemic. So now, even more than ever, it's important to pay attention to how we are proactively preparing for the patient's appointments. What do we need to have in line and ready and prepared for them so that they can get through their appointment as smoothly as possible? Verbal skills that support and build value for future care. As we step back into our practicing days and we are in the process of reconnecting with our patients, our elevated verbal skills are going to make a big difference in resetting those expectations and resetting perception of value of their treatment and their care. So it's important that we stay focused and clear and practice our verbal skills in order to do that well. So the proactive approach to patient communication, it's important that we remember at this time more than ever, we've always thought it's important to make it personal, but now we really need to go back to the basics and think about what personal looks like today as we reconnect with patients. We're going to go way back to the basics. If you are currently using text confirmations, email confirmations, if you've got your confirmations on autopilot, we highly recommend that you take that and go back to telephone confirmations and outreach. That initial communication and connection with the patient is going to be key to reconnect with them and to educate them on what they can expect and to ensure that they feel comfortable and confident and clear about their appointments. If we're not doing this now, what this may be looking like in your practice is a full schedule of confirmed appointments that ultimately turn into cancellations and no-shows the day of. What we want to make sure is that we're rebuilding that bridge and we're taking the time necessary to connect and communicate effectively. So make it personal. Yes, this is going to take a little more time for the business team to do it in this way, but it will be time well spent as you see the results in your schedule in the days to come. We want to partner with the patient in these conversations, asking permission to have these conversations, asking if they have any questions, checking in on them, making it a personal connection. We care about our patients and we want them to feel cared for. What this can also look like if we're not comfortable or confident in how we execute these phone calls is it can feel rushed, it can feel robotic, it can feel cold, it can feel disconnected to the patient. And that's not what we want, especially now. So we need to practice these skills so that we're comfortable and confident in what we're doing and how we're communicating. Work through what to expect. Practice how you're going to explain the processes to the patient, what they can expect at check-in, what we'll need from them, and what they can expect from us. And that we're going to be going through those pre-COVID screening questions as well, making sure that they understand the reason and the purpose behind that, and being comfortable in communicating through any concerns, obstacles, or objections that our patients may give at that time. Reducing the risk of assumption and miscommunication. That's going to be key. We want to know what their concerns are now, and we want to be able to explain to them what's in it for them. Remember when I was telling you earlier what your patients may be thinking. We need to make sure that our communication skills reflect those questions, that they can see the benefits of the steps we're taking for them, the benefits of these updated processes for them. And that can help offset any concerns or frustrations that they may feel if we're partnering with them in those conversations. So be proactive in these approaches. Be prepared to have these conversations, be prepared for their questions, and be comfortable and confident in your ability to communicate with them. And as I said earlier, keep it positive. I want to make sure that from the very beginning, we are taking a positive approach. We're excited to be open again. We're excited to see you. We're excited to be taking care of you again. And we've taken some great lengths to keep you safe. And we've always taken great lengths to be protective for you. And now we're taking them to an even elevated level, honoring the guidelines that have been passed down to us. So we want to make sure they see that we do this all for the sake of our care for them. Keep it positive. And practice. Now, a lot of what Jameson does when we're working with teams is helping them to build their own skill sets in the role they play in the practice. Everyone plays a pivotal role in the practice, especially when it comes to the patient experience and the patient's relationship with us. And what we encourage is that you role play these scenarios together. I know that's not the most exciting sounding homework to do, but your ability to step into these conversations confidently is key. And the way that you can build your confidence in those conversations is practice. So role playing together with your peers, with your teammates, all the various scenarios that you may identify you're either experiencing now and struggling with, or that you foresee when you reopen, that is going to help you be very clear in how to engage with your patients in that way. Practice, practice, practice. Now, as I said earlier, we're going back to a lot of telephone technique. And always, 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 our ability to communicate effectively with our patients on the telephone has been important. But now more than ever, it's going to play a key role in building your patient's confidence, reconnecting with them, and building the value for their appointment, and ensuring that they will keep their appointments. So we need to make sure we're giving some good focus and attention to the telephone and how we are communicating via the phone. This is going to take elevated verbal skills. Something that we teach frequently is introducing to you, the dental practice team, the difference between weak words and strong words, weak words and elevated value words. We want to make sure we're building value through our vocabulary. So if we're just calling to do this, or, you know, would you want to do this, or why don't we just watch this, or I'll stick you into the schedule here. You know, a lot of ways that are more casual conversation words. If we elevate our verbal skills to that next level, that's heightened customer service. That's a value building experience for your patients and for the practice. So if you want to pursue excellence in your practice, you cannot avoid the pursuit of excellence in our verbal skills, both in the telephone with the patients and when they're face to face. I'd like to walk you through a few examples of how the patient's conversation may go as you're starting to re-engage with them via the telephone. Now remember, we're going to need extra time for this conversation. These are things that may have been automated before, and they may become automated again into the future, but now is not the time. Now is the time to go back to the basics and make connection. So we want to make sure that we're checking in with the patient, introducing ourselves on that call, and also checking in on their well-being. How have they been? How is their family? Are they well? And then walking them through the purpose of our call, reminding them, perhaps they were already on the schedule, but boy, a lot has happened since they may have made that appointment, right? Or that we're needing to reschedule them based upon their level of need. That we're reminding them of the purpose of the call, reminding them of the care for the appointment that we're calling them about, building value for that care. Getting their confirmation, a verbal yes, or answering any questions that they may have, and then that we're also walking them through what to expect. So some of the verbal skills that may be helpful for you as you're elevating that conversation in the current state are things like this. Mr. Jones, I'm excited to let you know that our office is now open and seeing patients. Dr. Jameson has reviewed your information from your last visit and asked me to call you today as it is important to us to schedule your next appointment. What concerns or questions do you have for me? Now you may notice in terms of those elevated verbal skills and the building of the value, I'm using Dr. Jameson's name, that Dr. Jameson asks that I call, and that we have reviewed the information, and it's important for us to reserve that next appointment. These are the elements that build the value. And then I confidently and openly ask what concerns or questions that the patient may have. And then I'm going to have a pause. I'm going to let that patient speak, and I'm going to actively listen. Listening is going to be key throughout this entire process. Your ability to listen and reflect back what the patient's saying or asking, and then help guide them through the questions they may have, is going to be important. Another piece of that conversation may be this. We have changed our scheduling process in order to follow the CDC guidelines at this time. I'd like to take a few moments to ask you the following pre-screening questions, okay? And that we can ask them the questions we need to ask to make sure that it's safe for them to come in and have that appointment. Another option would be, Mr. Jones, we want you to feel confident that we are doing everything we can to make sure you have a safe experience. Now, I'm fully aware that you may have a mixed bag in terms of your patient's sense of confidence in coming or not. You may have some that are banging down your door ready to have their appointment. You may have some that are concerned and resistant. We want to make sure that we're creating a safe space for conversation, however that path may go in this phone call. In order to best serve you and our patient family, we've made some updates and changes to your experience at your appointment. May I walk through what you can expect when you join us for your appointment? May I walk through this with you? They're going to say, if they say no, I would be shocked. You can email me and tell me they said no because they're going to say yes. And this is going to be the time where I want you to set the expectations of the path and the process that they're going to step into when they arrive at your practice. May I walk through what you can expect when you join us for your appointment? And then I want to make sure you've practiced how you're going to walk through the steps, those initial steps of their check-in and anything that you need beforehand to make it as smooth as possible. Now, remember, there's benefits in every step of the process. So if you're needing their patient forms ahead of time, we want to say something like, Mr. Jones, we'll be sending you some updated health history forms that we'd like for you to complete prior to your appointment. We're going to send those to you electronically so that they arrive as conveniently as possible to you. And we ask that you complete those and return it to us prior to your appointment. This will help us prepare as best as possible for you, and it will help your appointment go as quickly and as smoothly as possible, okay? So we're going to explain to them what we're going to do, what we expect from them, and why this is a benefit to them. This is the key question that we need to get comfortable with. Do you have any questions for me? If you're finding that you're rushing through the confirmations, if you're finding that you're having broken appointments, we need to take it back a few steps and make sure that we have clearly walked through the process with them and that we've given opportunities for questions to be asked and for them to get to a level of comfort, and that we do indeed have a confident confirmation. So don't be afraid to ask if they have questions for you. And if you are afraid that they're going to ask you some questions, those are the verbal skills we need to practice and role play with our teammates. Now remember, this is the path that you're going to be walking them through as they are preparing for their appointment. We want to make sure we're doing our pre-COVID screening questions, sending them whatever they need. We're going to be confirming the appointments, and we want to make sure that they're clear on what they can expect at check-in and in the greeting and screening process, and any changes in the length of their schedule of their appointment. We want to make sure that we are clearly communicating that so they know what to expect, how long their appointment is going to be. The last thing we want them to do is to think it's going to be 60 minutes when indeed it ends up being 75 minutes, right? So we want to make sure whatever we've set for them and what type of amount of time we've reserved, we've also communicated that to them as well. And any changes in the checkout process, if they would prefer a certain way to pay for the treatment at that time, or whatever the case may be, how we're going to schedule the next appointment, anything that's changed or anything that we need their help in, let's make sure we're clearly communicating that. Okay, so remember these and build your own version of this and prepare your verbal skills and get everybody on the team on the same page in terms of how you're going to execute this from day one. I want to take a moment and discuss consultations. Through all of this, it's going to be important that not only we execute these necessary appointments that we have been waiting to provide and that our patients have been needing, but we are going to be finding diagnosed care in these appointments. So the time will come when we need to discuss treatment and consult with that patient about these diagnoses and partner with them on how to move forward. So this may change for you. In this time, the way that you present consultations and present your treatment may look different than it did before. So I want you to think for your own self in your own practice, what does right look like right now for you? What's important to you? What has historically been important to you and has made your treatment presentations as successful as possible? And how can we incorporate teledentistry or electronic treatment plans or new measures of how we sit together for social distancing and protection, that we can continue to have the right kind of consultations for your practice. But I also want you to think about what are our limitations that we feel we have when it comes to presenting treatment chairside or what the patient's in the practice, and what steps do we need to make to have consultations for larger diagnosed treatment down the road. So these are some areas that you may want to explore as a team and prepare for as you step into practice and you see what reality is going to look like for you in your dental days. What adjustments need to be made? You may be doing more same-day consultations. You may start embracing teledentistry as an opportunity to reconnect with the patients, to answer questions, to speak to decision makers, to present that treatment through the photography that I hope you're still gathering in your appointments, so that you're doing the diagnosis, you're gathering the information in their appointments, and then perhaps you're scheduling time where you can be without PPE and having a conversation electronically. Making sure that you're preparing before your appointments and taking advantage of all the tools and steps you can take to make patient financing, to make scheduling, to make all of the steps that get you from point A to point B as easy as possible for you and for the patient. Do your homework. All of the tools that you more than likely already have in your practice, from your practice management software, your patient communication software, your patient financing companies, they're all taking steps to adapt with you and provide services that help you continue to provide elevated customer service to your patients and also get you through the systems and processes that you need. So do your homework, get trained up on what you can be doing more of through the tools you already have. I can promise you, more than likely, there are one or two things that would make a big difference for you right now that you already have at your fingertips. You just didn't know it. So do your homework and find out what those elements are and begin incorporating those and getting your team comfortable with them. Because we don't want to continue to delay necessary treatment. It's just going to bog you down the road. And ultimately, our purpose and our mission for our patients is still the same, right? We want to be providing that heightened level of care to get them to a state of health and well-being. And when you're diagnosing treatment, we need to have a comfortable and clear process that we're going to walk our patients through. And that may adapt as you continue on through your days. Once you reopen, you may see different needs or you may see different changes, and it's going to be important that you have awareness of where you need to adapt and adjust. So staying connected, touchless, I want to walk through some proactive approaches to reducing your patient's time in the practice. If our goal is that we want to be as safe as possible for both our team and our patients, if we want to be as streamlined and as efficient as possible in those appointments, there are steps we can take to make those touchless ahead of time or after the fact experiences smooth that patient check-in, check-out, and preparation through the day. Two-way texting, again, I mentioned that your patient communication softwares, a lot of them are doing this for you. So how you're utilizing texting or phone calls for that patient check-in so that makes that a smoother process. Whatever is the easiest and the smoothest and is available for you and how you're going to do check-in and the patient's arrival notifications, we want to get real clear on that and then clearly communicate that to the patient. Utilizing online forms, utilizing online payment options. Clear and complete financial arrangements. We want to make sure we are dotting the I's and crossing the T's, because we want to make sure we don't drop the ball when there's an opportunity, or that there was a dropped ball in the preparation process that limits our ability to help our patients. That we're scheduling for totality, we're scheduling all their appointments as easy as possible for them, and we're scheduling those pre and post appointments as effectively as possible. And as I mentioned earlier, how are you utilizing, and will continue to utilize, teledentistry to help that patient experience? I want you to remember that in the patient's appointments, in consultations, in how you're scheduling and so on, your patients aren't just wondering about safety. Your patients historically have been concerned about cost, have been concerned about time and that fear of the dentistry. Those are primary concerns that the ADA has discovered year over year in their surveys, their consumer surveys, of how the patients are behaving and why they're delaying treatment or not coming to the dentist. So we know that in this environment, those are going to be heightened because we're all in the sense of, I need to get secure, I need to be safe, I need stability. So what are we doing to care for our patients in those areas? Great customer service is, how easy are we making it for our patients to get what they want or need? How easy are we making this process? Because in the end, the process has become more difficult for us, hasn't it? It's more complex, it's more complicated. There's a lot more that we have to do in safety measures that are changing the game. It's change for us, which change is always difficult, and it's change for them. So how can we make it as easy as possible for them? Any cracks that you had in your systems and the patient experience process, consultation process, scheduling process, financing process that you had before, you need to shore those up. You need to look at those areas, those gaps in your systems, and get them cleaned up, because we don't have time, we don't have the place for dropped balls in this new state of practice. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to shore up those cracks in our processes, in our schedule? It's important that we prioritize team connection time. Now, if you're not making time to connect, this is going to be key for you now. Remember, your team members also are asking questions about, is this safe for me, right? What's the plan? What's the process? What's my role in it? Who's responsible for what? What am I supposed to say? And so on. So we need to make sure we're having connection time to get everybody on the same page and stay on the same page. This is where your daily huddles are going to become key. We have always at Jameson believed in daily huddles and have encouraged these with our teams that we work with across the country. And so now more than ever, these are going to be important. Historically, this has been the process that we recommend at Jameson for an effective daily huddle. As you can see, it's not just a regurgitation of the schedule that's ineffective. We want to have a solid 10 minutes of really great information, getting everyone on the same page, partnering together to orchestrate an ideal day for us to all experience together. Where are the voids in the schedule, and how can we all as a team rally together to help fill those voids? Where is time in the schedule for emergencies? Where are new patients coming in so that we're aware of those new patients so we can roll out that red carpet for them? Any financial concerns that we need to address with patients that are coming into the practice? Any needs in that patient's information that we need to address, be it diagnosed and unscheduled treatment or any necessary radiographs that they may need to take at that time? We want to review that and have everyone aware for that day. At this time, I would add another step, and it may mean that you need to add a few more minutes to your huddle, that we review what the processes are, give everyone the opportunity to make sure we're all clear, answer any questions that we may have about those processes, so that when we step into the day, we're ready. And then we continue to close the meeting with a positive thought for the day, so we're all starting on a positive and encouraging note. But remember, that number 10 edition is going to be important, that we focus some time to prepare ourselves for today's new processes. And what you're going to find in this patient experience is, as you go along, week over week, sometimes perhaps day after day, you may be adjusting that schedule and that process because you're going to become more comfortable in it. Or you may realize, oh, we need to do this differently. Oh, we can adjust this. So we need to make sure everyone knows if anything's changed, right? What's new? So I also want to encourage at this time that you can't over communicate. You can't over connect with your team right now. Everyone's at a heightened state of stress. And so we want to make sure we're not only having those daily huddles to prepare for the day, but we're also having some team debriefs. whether that's every day at the end of the day that you gather together and debrief on what went well, what needs attention, what needs to change, or maybe you're doing it weekly. At the end of each week, you're doing a weekly debrief. I want to introduce to you what's called the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. This was created several decades ago by W. Edwards Deming, and larger corporations such as Toyota have adapted this into their work life because it's really a process of continuous learning. Right now, we are in a massive change mode, and we are continuously learning and adapting together. So if we create this intentional cycle that we are intentionally focusing on and giving time to, it will help us adapt and go through the process of change as a team more effectively. We want to plan those processes, as I mentioned at the beginning. We want to make sure we're planning the processes with the people that will be ultimately responsible for those processes as intentionally and proactively as possible. Then we're going to execute those processes for a time being, perhaps for a day, perhaps for a week. Then we want to evaluate those processes. We want to check in on how's it going? How is that patient flow going for us? Where were the stumbling blocks? What went well? What needs to change? Is it all pretty good? Are we scheduling too much time now? Do we need to reduce the time? What do we need to adjust? So reviewing how it's going and what adjustments need to be made, and then to act, to adapt to what we have reviewed in the check part of the cycle, that we act and put it into play. So as you can see, it's cyclical. Then we start to do it all again. And if we're using this in our debriefs, we're all going to stay on the same page. Confusion will be reduced and confidence will be increased and comfort will be increased. It also gives everyone a chance to have a space and a place to share the obstacles they're dealing with. Everyone may be at different levels of comfort and understanding of what right looks like right now in your practice. So we want to make sure we're having time for a team debrief. So remember, for your practice, as you're preparing to reopen, or if you already reopened and you find yourself stumbling through some elements of the patient experience, step back and take time as a team to focus, clarify, and refine. And then take a look at it from the patient's perspective on where you can clarify more effectively, where you can focus more intentional attention to them and be more aware of what their expectations may be, and refine our processes in the way that we lead and support our patients through their appointments. Because in the end, if we do this well, if we do this with the patient in mind, if we communicate and connect with them intentionally and with great care, and we do that not only in the phone call, but throughout the entire appointment, it's going to continue to help build what we consider the pillars of a healthy patient practice partnership. It's building trust in you as their care provider. It's building value in the care that you're providing to them. It's building a sense of urgency for their care and ongoing connection with you. And it's building a need, that sense of need of, I need this person in my life helping me to stay healthy and helping me with my ongoing wellness of my mouth, my teeth, and my smile. So take a step back, and what does right look like for you? Remember what your patients need from you. They need you to help them in the conversations through the scheduling and reconfirming or confirming of their appointments. We need to be guiding them clearly and effectively on what they can expect in their upcoming appointments. Big drop balls that you may be seeing right now in your own patient's experience or in others is they weren't communicated effectively with in terms of what to expect, and they didn't have opportunities to share questions or concerns so that they felt ultimately comfortable. There was a lot of assumption that is going on, and assumption is the lowest form of communication, so be careful. Clear and smooth guidance on that check-in and check-out process, guided support before, during, and after their appointments. Stay positive. Clear and efficient financial and scheduling processes, and the verbal skills that build those pillars that support those patients and build value for future care. We want to reward the great decisions they're making for their ongoing health and well-being by building them up through excellent verbal skills. It's been a pleasure to be with you today. If you have questions for me about your own patient experience or process, we welcome your contact at our website, www.jmsn.com. Again, thank you to Henry Schein, and thanks to all of you for joining me today. I wish you all the best as you reopen and re-enter your practices.